Hey guys, it's Mr. Hayden. First of all, welcome back to school. I just realized over the weekend that I may not be seeing some of you until actually nearly a week from today while you're watching this, and that's because clearly I'm not here today. On Friday, many of you maybe leave early to go to the prom. So I'm not going to see you then, so I won't see you till the Tuesday, the next week in June, in the first week of June. So I wanted today to still be something productive, so I basically put together this screencast that is going to review with you how to solve a right triangle if you are given either one of the side lengths and one of the angle measures, or two of the side lengths. And then I'm going to have you do an in-class quiz at the end of the period, and pretty much everyone's going to have their own problems, although you can get help from other people on the problems. But this video that you're going to watch now is posted on MrHayden.net, and you're more than welcome to watch it, to go over to one of the PCs and watch it as you are solving your problems on the quiz that you get for the second half of the period. So here goes. Like I said, there are two types of these problems. In one, you're given an angle measure and a side length, and you're asked to find the other two side lengths and the missing angle measure. And in the other, you're just given two side lengths. Let's do the first kind, and that's where you're given one side length, which in this case of this problem here is the hypotenuse, and one of the angle measures aside from the right angle. And in this case, we're talking about angle A, which is 41 degrees. Okay, so when you have this type of problem, the first thing you want to do is find the missing side angle. And that's relatively easy to do if you know the fact that the three angles of any triangle have to add up to 180 degrees. So using that fact, or that truth, I'm going to write a little equation that says, okay, the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B plus the measure of angle C equals 180. Okay, well, what is, let's see, what is the measure of angle A? That's just 41. What's the measure of angle B? Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. And what's the measure of angle C? It's 90, and that is all equal to 180. So now I have a little equation that I can easily solve for angle B. And I'm going to get the measure of angle B plus 131 equals 180. And I'm going to subtract 131 from both sides of the equation, and I get the measure of angle B is equal to 49 degrees. Alright, so now I know all three angles, and I just need to figure out what side lengths AC and CB are. Okay, a convention that's frequently used in working with triangles, right triangles with angles A, B, and C, are to have the side lengths also be A, B, and C, except little a, little b, and little c. And the side length little a is always directly across from angle capital A, and the same goes for side length B and side length C, which is always the hypotenuse. Okay, so I need to figure out what side length A and side length B are. Okay, well, what do? I use the side length that I know, which in this case is the hypotenuse, and I use one of the angle measures. So let me say I'm going to use my 49 degrees. Alright, and let's say that I want to solve for side length A. So all I do is I pick the side length I know, one of the two angles, and one of the two side lengths that I'm trying to solve for. And I figure out which trig equation would involve those three items. Alright, so I'm talking about the 49-degree angle. So I need to decide what the side is that has a length of 4 relative to the 49-degree angle. Well, that's pretty easy. It's the hypotenuse, right? The hypotenuse is always the longest side of the equation. It's the same here. It's also the side that's directly across from the right angle, which in this case is angle C. So that means the 4 is the hypotenuse. Alright, so now the question is, relative to angle B, the 49-degree angle, what side is side A? Is it the adjacent or the hypotenuse? Okay, well, or the adjacent or the opposite, I should say. If I'm sitting here at angle B and I'm looking straight across the triangle, okay, well that would make the side that I'm looking at the opposite side. Alright, meaning that side A has to be the adjacent. It forms part of the 49-degree angle, and since we know the hypotenuse is 4 and I just said what the opposite is, it's the only other alternative, so it has to be the adjacent. Okay, now I say, okay, which trig function uses the adjacent and the hypotenuse? Alright, well, that would be cosine. Cosine uses the adjacent and hypotenuse. It's the ka and SOHCAHTOA. Right. So that means my equation, my trig equation, is going to end up being, okay, the cosine of 49 degrees is equal to A over 4. Alright, now, like I think I showed you before, I like to solve an equation that I get that looks like that by turning it into a proportion and then cross-multiplying to solve. So if I turn that into a proportion and I cross-multiply, I get 4 times the cosine of 49 degrees is equal to A. Okay, and that would give me, I need to do that on my calculator, I need to do 4. So 4 times the, let's see, cosine of 49 degrees, and that gives me 2.6. So that means I now know that A is 2.6. Right. So now I have 3 angles, 2 sides, I just need the third side. Okay, well, if I know 2 sides of a right triangle, probably the easiest way to get the third side is just to use the Pythagorean theorem. So I'm going to use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Well, in this case, a is 2.6, b is what I'm trying to figure out, and c is 4. So my equation becomes 2.6 squared plus b squared equals 4 squared, which means 2.6 squared is, let's see, it is 2.6 to the second power, so squared, and that's 6.76 plus b squared equals 16. Alright, so let me subtract 6.76, and I get b squared is equal to, let's see, 9.24, and then I solve that by taking the square root of both sides of the equation, And I get b is the square root of 9.24. So let me do that. Square root of 9.2, oops, 0.24, 3.03. So that's approximately 3.0. Alright, and now I pretty much have all three sides and all three angles. The sides are 3.0, 4, and 2.6, and the angles are 41 degrees, 49 degrees, and of course 90 degrees. Alright, so that's one type of problem. The other type of problem is one where you're given two side lengths and none of the angles. So when this occurs, the first thing I want to do typically is to find the third side length. So just like in the last problem, I found the third angle. In this the type of problem where I start with two side lengths, I find the third side length. And I do that using the Pythagorean theorem. So let's see. In this case, I know that C is 14, B is 8, and then my question is, what is the side that is of length A? So I'm going to say, alright, A squared plus B squared is C squared. And that means A squared plus 64 is, let's see, what is 14 squared? I think I want to say 196. Let's see if I'm right. 14, or is it 184? Times 14, 196. I was right the first time. Okay, and let me just solve that equation for A. So when I subtract, I get 132, and I solve that by taking the square roots of both sides, and I get A is the square root of 132, which is 132, 11.5. Alright, so now I know all three sides, and I'm ready to start finding an angle. Alright, so let me, at this point you can pick which of the two angles you want to solve for. It doesn't really matter, either A or B. You always know you're going to have a right angle. It's always going to be 90 degrees. Your job is to find one of the other two angles. So I'm just going to pick angle B. And let me pick any two of the sides. So what the heck, I'll pick C and B. And I know B is 8, C is 14. And the question is, what is angle B? Alright, so now I need to figure out which trig equation to use. Well, if I'm solving for angle B, and I'm sitting there behind angle B, looking across the triangle, what side is the side that is 8 in length? Well, that would be the opposite side. What side is the side that's 14 in length? Well, that's the hypotenuse. Which trig function uses opposite and hypotenuse? Well, that's SOH from SOHCAHTOA. So that must mean my trig equation is going to be sine. So I'm going to write the equation. Sine of B is opposite of hypotenuse. So that would be 8 divided by 14. And then to solve that, I'm going to have to use the inverse sine function, which I do to both sides of my equation. And that gives me the measure of angle B is equal to sine inverse 8 divided by 14. So I need to go over to my calculator. I need to do sine inverse, and then I need to do 8 divided by 14, and that gives me 34.8 degrees. 34.8 degrees. Okay, so now I know 2 of the 3 angles. I know 3 of the sides, and I just need to find the final missing angle, which I do by using the fact that all the angles of a triangle have to add up to 180. So I write another little equation that says, okay, 34.8 plus the measure of angle A plus 90 equals 180. And then I solve that little equation I get. So 124.8 plus the measure of angle A equals 180. I'm going to subtract out 124.8 from both sides of the equation. And what do I get? Measure of angle A is, let's see, 180 minus 124, minus 124.8, 55.2. So that means B is 55.2. Or I'm sorry, measure of angle A is 55.2 degrees. Angle B, 34.8 degrees. And side A is 11.5. And I'm all through. Alright. I hope you found this helpful, and that when you're working on your own problems, that you will watch this video again. You can go over to one of the PCs and watch. Go to mrhayden.net, and remember to log on to the internet over on the PCs on the sides of the classroom. You're going to need to use your username and your school username and your school password. So basically log on to the PCs as you typically do, math 4-2 with a password of password 1. Then open Internet Explorer, Google Chrome. If a little dialog box that prompting you for a username and password doesn't come up immediately, type the address 10.10.15.254 in the address bar. Then choose the, I think, continue to the site option. A dialog box will prompt you for your username. Use your school username. Use your school password. And then click OK or hit the Enter key. And then from then on, go to mrhayden.net, go to the College Prep tab, and go down to today's date, and there should be a link to the video on YouTube, which you can use your, if you have headphones or earbuds, you can use those for volume. Otherwise, even just watching the video will probably help you solve the problems. So, at any rate, I think I'm going to have the sub now pass out one of a set of problems to each of you, and you can spend the rest of the period working on the problems. When you're finished, make sure that your answers are labeled clearly. Either draw in the side lengths and the angle measures, or write them out in a clear way and put a box around them right on the paper. And turn that in at the end of the period, and then you'll be done. So, okay. We'll hope to see you on Friday, or not see you on Friday. If I don't see you, be safe at the prom, and certainly be safe on Saturday and Sunday after the prom, which is probably even more important. and come back to school ready for your final 3 weeks of your high school career. All right. Cheers. Good night.